10 years. For over 10 years, have been making games, starting from a small band of friends making crappy RPGs and other things. But now, the Nut Shack, Quarter Game, Super Ledge Hop, Yuuto Ichika, I'm now here! What up? It's ChairGTables. We're at the end of the year again, and I gotta say, we haven't released a single game on Steam this year. That's because we kinda got distracted. And by kinda, I meant a lot. But hey, did you know I've been creating games for more than a decade? This means that we could also treat this like a lame dimension age comparison video. After all, when the decade started, I was just a middle school student who was making meme games. And now, I'm a college graduate with a job in game development. So this might be an interesting progression video, despite my slow progression in actually learning game development, due to my desire to make jokes out of the games I made. But first, let's start off with what I'm sure most of you came here for, 2019. To start off the year, there was this Touhou Game Jam. So of course, with my recent celebration of getting the speedrun world record of Pringles for the Sega Genesis, I made a game based off of it, with an added new mechanic, which was this air dash. And was obviously inspired by well, actually, we can't really say it was based off of it because of a certain dead project we started before we even heard about Celeste. This dead project was supposed to be a spin-off sequel to a game on Steam called Hentai. If you remember my year in review back in 2017, I proposed to the developer if I could make a follow-up to a series with a new key mechanic, which was the ability to attack opponents by dashing towards them. This was overall a nice way to deviate from the normal jumping present in a large majority of the original game. After all, you had no way of defeating your enemies in the original game. However, a year later, right after the developer released a true official sequel, he was banned on Steam. So, to avoid the possibility of us getting banned on Steam as well, we ceased development of Hentai spin-off game. I was angry! But luckily when a game jam opportunity popped up with the theme of life and death, we thought this would be a good way to revisit the concepts of Hentai's Dead spin-off sequel. To fit the theme, we used the method of attacking enemies from the spin-off sequel into the only method of actually navigating the levels. So instead of designing levels where the enemies block your path, you now have to use the enemies to navigate the path instead. And since the original game's name references an adult genre, we named the game we submitted to the Game Jam off of an adult doujin of our protagonists and the cockroaches that were in it. That's how Sumireko's Roach Stomping Mafia works. Despite the references to disturbing content, we were able to get second place. And hey, look! We were able to make something more solid in 72 hours compared to that of 2010's YouTube Poop Castle, which took me about a month to do. After all that, even with all the weird stuff that this game was based off of, when people see it, they're more likely to think about the popular meme in early 2019 with those crazy Mafia City ads. But of course, our references to perverted content doesn't stop there, because in our next Game Jam, we are very obvious about it. Around the Touhou community, there's this certain panel from a doujin that's quite notable for being memed up all the time, where Sakia makes a bold statement. Despite being in a helpless state, due to its meme status, it was our duty to reference this at some point. But how? By naming the game exactly that. Yes, the name of this game is Touhou, I Will Never Lose to Cock. Well, I mean, it's a bit of a valid name. I guess there's this cock here, and the final boss is a cock too. And of course, the theme of this game jam is pride. I will never lose to cock. It's a pretty prideful statement, I would say. But of course, we're pretty transparent about the doujin inspirations here. Even characters from other doujins are here, like this faceless mister right here. We ain't hiding anything in this game. But even with all the features we put into this game, like many playable characters, a multiplayer mode, and a single-player campaign, we didn't even manage to make it to top 8. Quite a difference compared to the Sumireko game, which was second place. So what happened? All those features are actually the reason why we didn't place well. The scale of this project was too big, so we never finished it. In addition to that, I had my family visit me in mainland America all the way from Guam, so I didn't want to ruin their entire weekend by sitting on the computer all day after they traveled halfway across the world. Anyways, by the end of the game jam, many features were shown to be available, but were actually inaccessible to the player in the version we submitted. You can also play all of the characters in the game, but the game soft locks after a few stages, as we weren't able to complete all of the stages for the characters. In summary, this just means that most of the content we planned to finish was locked behind closed doors. To show off as much as we could, the main menu felt more like a debug menu, just to show what was planned to be added. But sometimes the players couldn't even access all of the available levels, as the game crashes extremely often. As bad as that is, one of the biggest losses we had by the end of the game jam was that we couldn't put an emphasis on the most important feature in the game, which was the multiplayer versus mode. Why would we value multiplayer more if a solid single player mode would have already been viable for the game jam? You see, whenever I attend game jams, I usually have an outside motive. To explain what mine was this time around, when I have a table for events to show off my games, I always think to myself, how can I seduce more people to come chill here with me? And so, when I began observing small indie teams during other events, there was this one pattern that seems common to me, and was that multiplayer games with quick gameplay seems to consistently attract more people, especially groups. And that's why, even when we failed at winning the game jam, we couldn't just stop there. With my ulterior motive actually just being me wanting a quick way to attract people to our table plus events. Plus, I really wanted to revisit a game I cancelled in 2013 called Edward Kun. It's literally the same game except with no multiplayer. You see, Edward Kun was cancelled because I felt like I was literally just making a Ninja Jajamaru clone. But this time around, I was doing something different, which was turning Ninja Jajamaru-kun into a multiplayer game. In fact, the multiplayer game is so emphasized that everything in this game is playable, including all the generic enemies and the final boss. But you'll need hack for those. This is possible since all of the enemies are programmed with player inputs, rather than AI doing AI-specific things. This is something I haven't done before, and with that, I'm also glad I was finally able to create my own multiplayer vision of one of my favorite Japanese-only Famicom games. Except, I totally didn't expect they would revive the Dead series weeks later by announcing an official game with multiplayer support as well! We actually kinda did this next one with limited time too, because of course, when a new game engine is released, we gotta get that quick clout by making the earliest games using it. Enter YUUTO Ichika Makes Friends, a game made with the recently released Game Boy engine called GBStudio. It's pretty rare for us to make a story-only game. The last time we did this was back in 2013, where we made Liz's game, Imoto RPG. Anyways, if you've been with us for a while, you should already know that we really love Yuuto Ichika, despite us not being her creators. We also love all the support from the people that played our Steam release last year, Super Ledge Hop, Double Laser, and since Yuuto played a role in that game, this Game Boy game would be the perfect opportunity to explore the aftermath of Super Ledge Hop through the eyes of a different character. In fact, this game is called Super Ledge Hop Gaiden in the Japanese version. Yes, we made a Japanese localization of our game in a recently released game engine with no Japanese text support! So how are we able to release a Japanese version if the engine cannot handle Japanese? Well, it's a bit easy, but it was really long and annoying to do. We basically got the texture with all the text and just replaced all the Unicode characters we didn't need into Japanese characters. The annoying part about this is that in the editor, all the dialogue looks like a garbled mess of Unicode characters. So when we make a mistake in the translation to Japanese, we have to find out where in the garbled mess of Unicode characters is that mistake. But what messed me up even more was that I completed this translation while staffing for a convention, while also participating in a speedrun marathon. It's almost like the Super Ledge Hop situation we had last year, where I released a game on Steam, while also staffing for a convention during this as well. But even with all that stress, I'm glad we were able to expand Yuuto's background more. But we weren't done with Yuuto just yet! Okay, this next one isn't really our game, but as it turns out, a bunch of us over at Lame Dimension really like the puzzle game Puyo Puyo. So we gotta put something we love in a game we love, and that something is YUUTO Ichika. With this mod for Puyo Versus, we added her as a playable character, accompanied with new illustrations and voice clips, even though we do love Puyo. A large chunk of our following doesn't even know what Puyo is. So to let everyone have fun with this mod, we decided to hold a beginner-only tournament. The original plan we had was to compete in a Puyo Nexus beginner tournament with this mod, but they stopped doing tournaments, so we held our own. This YUUTO mod was also great to show our players what powers YUUTO currently has, but we wanted to explore her powers a bit more. So we held another event. Not a Puyo tournament, but a speedrun marathon called YUUTO Ichika Saves Lives. But how do we explore YUUTO's lore if it's just a 24-hour speedrun marathon? This is where we take the advantage of intermissions between each speedrun. Ever so often, the short breaks, where we set up for the next segment, would feature a short storybook video about YUUTO during the stream. It was a nice way to introduce runners and viewers to our game series too, as most of the people that were present in this event were completely new. Also, if I'm going to be honest, we actually didn't finish making the storybook until the last hour of the speedrun marathon. In fact, we were rendering the final video while the last speedrun segment was happening. Seems like rushing the completion of something while an event was taking place will be my curse forever. I would say, I'm always speedrunning game development in a sense, since I'm always chasing after deadlines. But for this game, I had to get it done or its impact would amount to nothing. And that's because this game was made while the Area 51 raid was happening. If I finished this game while the raid ended, it would have been way harder for people to end up discovering it, due to the slowly declining interest of most things like this. But thank goodness I was able to finish it within the 24-hour gap, because I was able to give the world Area 51 Running Ninja Raid. This game features one of our more obscure characters in our game series, Crisette. We just wanted to give shoutouts in a way to the fans and some of the people that made fan art of this minor character, so this was our way of saying thanks. After all, I couldn't think of any other character that would do something crazy like raiding Area 51. Anyways, thinking about it, the quality of the games I've been making recently under 24 hours have been steadily improving over the years. And with this project, I feel like despite its short development time, this game is already slightly ready to be released on the mobile app store. But mobile apps aren't really my thing, so I just dropped this idea. Like how I dropped the idea of actually going to Area 51 until this game idea came into my mind at 3 AM in the morning. There's also a few minor things I did related to game development in 2019, but they're more for utility rather than for enjoyment. One of them was a practice program for an arcade game called Centipede Chaos. I've already explained this whole program in depth in an earlier video, but to sum it up, I remade an arcade game in a few hours to consistently win the jackpot for tickets. This eventually led me to winning a fight stick and a PS4 with no trouble. So if you're interested in how I did this whole thing, check out the description for the link to the video about it. It's a wild ride, but you know what's even more wild? This next project. It led me to having the job I love. So you see, the ToeJam and Earl Twitter account was looking for an engineer involved with game development. I looked around to see what they needed a person like that for, and I found out that someone in their dev team needed help with a new game called Neighborhood Watch. I looked at the replies and man, I had some pretty tough competition. I felt that just sending them a message and showing them my previous work wouldn't be enough. So I knew I had to show them that I'm legit with this. I had to make a game that consisted of their ideas. From all the information I collected, it seems like they were making a game based off Zombies Ate My Neighbors with some shmup elements as well. So of course, I spent the weekend making a Zombies Ate My Neighbors-esque game, featuring ToeJam and Earl as the bosses. I also went further with this, as I used the same game engine they used, to really prove that I'm legit and do my homework. Despite it not being my go-to engine, with the game ready, I threw out a tweet towards them, and luckily enough, it got their attention. A few months of messaging back and forth with them, I was able to get the position. So if you enjoyed the fights in Super Ledge Hop, you'll love the enemies here, as this is my main role in the team. Shoutouts to Super Lechop though. We released Portuguese and French translations for this year as well, meaning that the game has 5 languages now. And it's all thanks to the support of the players who wanted to branch out our games to other languages. And I really mean it when I say big shoutouts to all of our players. You kept me going with my interest in game development. It took me a year after graduation to finally find a job to make use of my programming skills. I was stuck, getting rejection after rejection. I've come a long way in game development, despite my slow growth in skills. Because of my middle school days, all I made were low-quality meme games, with seemingly no improvement to them at all. After all, the only thing we wanted to do was make people laugh. A lot of my classmates back then thought that me making games was just an odd phase. But I'm still doing it today. And I have no intention of letting go of my silliness. So yes, memes can bring your dreams to life! Don't give up too easily, everyone, even if it takes years. And that's it! We finished the 2010 to 2019 saga. I went from a middle school memer in 2010 to a real game developer that utilizes memes to enhance game quality. It was truly a fun experience, and I don't intend to stop making games. Heck, our current project is called Hazuki Dies, and it feels really good that I can finally do the turn-based RPG system that I couldn't manage to pull off a decade ago. I've cancelled so many games just because of my lack of knowledge in the past, but the years went by and I've learned so much. So please, look forward to Hazuki Dies. We weren't even supposed to make this game, but I felt bad that Hazuki's Game Boy Advance game had only 1 minute worth of gameplay, which I showed off in my 2017 year-in review video. After all, Hazuki is one of the most important characters in our Lame Dimension universe. You'll see in the future why. But you might be able to piece it bit by bit when you see her childhood friendship with Chizuru, which was totally not supposed to happen, but we're too excited, so whatever. We'll just go with it. See you guys next time. Hopefully we make good progress in 2020!